Okay, so number 5.
The Fellowship of the Rings. Yeah, all those guys. I know what people are thinking, yeah. Oh, Sauron's the bad guy, but really, is he? Think about it. I mean, the guy's got a spiky head and a bad attitude, but does that really make him the villain? I don't think so. So these dudes show up, they cut off his finger, and then what do? They steal his bling. And it's like, what are we gonna do now? Well, why don't we melt it down for scrap metal? That seems like some shady Pawn Stars type routine to me.
Like when gold's raw like this, it really doesn't look like gold. It looks
Right.
like ugly, dirty brass, but that's the way gold looks.
I'm not really sure what's going on there. And let's take a look at Sauron for a minute, for real. The guy had a pretty diverse hiring practice. There's goblins, there's Uruk-hai, there's orcs. I don't know, are there other types of orcs? He probably hired them too. And I mean, he taught them valuable skills. He got them organized in a professional capacity, taught them metalworking, a little bit of agriculture, you know. Sauron was good for the little guy. Before then, what orcs have to do? Be target practice for elves? It seems like a step up. So let's look at the Fellowship, for real. What do you got? You got 4 gluttonous midgets.
What about breakfast?
All they do is laze about, act really annoying,
What about second breakfast?
and they don't really contribute anything at all. On top of that, you've got basically a couple of racists.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
Shall I describe it to you? Or would you like me to find you a box?
That's always good to have in the group. Need that when you go on an adventure. And of course, there's Gandalf, the guy who can talk to bugs and summon eagles whenever he wants. And here he is flying around on an eagle. And here he is again flying on an eagle. And here's a bunch of other people with Gandalf flying around on a bunch of eagles. Why didn't this asshole just call the eagles, fly them to Mordor, and just get this thing all over in like 15 minutes?
It was important for the Fellowship to band together to overcome adversity.
Just call the eagles.
Only through trial and tribulation will they learn the metal they have deep inside of themselves.
What are you waiting for? Just call the eagles.
For it is the good inside them that they needed to overcome the evil.
It's not that difficult. Call the eagles.
And only the good inside Frodo could destroy the ring.
Dude, I can literally hear the eagles. It's like they're already here. Just call them.
Sounded good at the time.
You know, I think Gandalf just liked to torture people. Like he wanted to make things difficult just because he's like one of those guys. Which makes him fit in perfectly with the rest of the Fellowship of the Rings. They're a bunch of assholes, and that's why they're number 5 on the list. Okay, so number 4 on the all-time villain list, Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid. Now, if you travel down the dark reaches of the internet, eventually you're going to stumble across the theory that Daniel is actually the bad guy in Karate Kid, and Johnny is his innocent victim.
The Karate Kid is the story of Daniel, a violent sociopath who moves to a California town and begins tormenting a local boy and his friends.
And if you really watch the movie, this mostly seems to be true. As others have pointed out, he's got that creepy stare he does at women. He basically picks every fight with the Cobra Kai guys. And seriously, don't even get me started on how a twerp like Daniel could score Elizabeth Shue in her 80s prime. That's the most ridiculous part of this movie. But I want to take it one step further. You can't just be an evil student. You have to have an evil master. And really, Mr. Miyagi is the first in a long line of terrible mentors. You've got Yoda, who instead of just telling Luke what to do and who to kill, he has to talk in fucking riddles and let Luke figure it out.
Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
And then he dies before Luke does.
No. Do not.
Thanks, Yoda. You've got my personal favorite, Tyler Durden,
Did you know if you mixed equal parts of gasoline and frozen orange juice concentrate, you can make napalm?
who just makes no bones about being a complete asshole and not helpful.
How's that working out for you? What? Being clever?
And you've got Glinda the Good Witch, who drops a house on a woman, steals her shoes,
That's all that's left of the Wicked Witch of the East.
and then sends Dorothy off on a bunch of dangerous adventures.
I'm afraid you've made rather a bad enemy of the Wicked Witch of the West. The sooner you get out of Oz altogether, the safer you'll sleep, my dear.
And then in the end, she's like, oh yeah, there's no place like home, so, just click your heels and you can go. You didn't need to do all that.
And tap your heels together 3 times. And think to yourself, there's no place like home.
Is she friends with Gandalf? Okay, so back to Mr. Miyagi. This dude has more red flags than the last 5 girls I've gone out with on Tinder. For starters, he's a terrible maintenance man. He's got no skill set, he does a crappy job, and he doesn't really care what he's doing. He'd rather sit around all day trimming bonsai trees than actually, doing his job. Until, of course, he recruits Daniel to do all his manual labor, but not on the apartment complex, on his palatial Okinawan homestead.
Damn it!
All under the auspice of learning karate.
Oh, Miss Spot.
How are you gonna learn karate from this?
Catch! Catch! Catch!
The answer is you're not. This is all a trick to break some serious child labor laws and get Daniel to do all the work.
Your karate training.
I'm what? I'm being your goddamn slave.
And it's not like this is the man's only flaws. Look at this collection of hot cars. I mean, the guy's obviously some kind of felon. And let's not forget what an incorrigible drunk he is. I mean, he even tries to get Daniel to drink with him. Dude, he's underage. Let's not forget he also specializes in beating up children.
Bobby, get him! Get him!
It's a weird relationship. I didn't realize it was that weird. And finally, he uses his weird voodoo magic to miraculously heal Daniel.
Well, can you fix my leg? I mean, with that thing you do?
How does that even work? All I know is it not only healed Daniel, it likely changed the rules of the tournament.
Daniel, look, everything above your waist is a point. From the head, you can hit the sternum, kidneys, and the ribs. You got it?
How else does that crane kick become legal at the last second? And that's why Mr. Miyagi is number 4, because he encouraged a twerp that violence is always an answer as long as you wrap it in some bullshit pseudo-mysticism. Okay, number 3 on the list of all-time movie villains. Rose from Titanic. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's the love story of our time, and it's got a soundtrack that sounds like it's being sung by a cat in heat. But really, it's the story of a boat that sank, and the story of a woman who murders another guy.
Jack.
Because she won't share a fucking door with him. So that's why she's number 3 on the list. But let's break this down. Okay, so first off, she claims to be in a loveless marriage with Billy Zane. But I have a real problem with this. Who doesn't love Billy Zane?
Listen to your friend Billy Zane. He's a cool dude.
I mean, and is he really that bad in this movie? Look at the things he does. He buys her gifts.
I thought tonight.
Good gracious.
He tries to help her when she's in need.
Oh my God, would you look at you? You look of fright.
He gives to the less fortunate.
We have an understanding then, Mr. Murdoch.
He looks after the welfare of children.
I have a child!
This is the villain? Are you sure? And poor Rose's life is so rough, she's driven to suicide. Is this really a suicide attempt? Jump. 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 Jump? You're not gonna jump, are you? Now really, I think this was all like an elaborate ploy to go slumming. And I mean, when you're as dreamy as DiCaprio... Who can blame her, right? But it doesn't take very long before she's totally fine again. Wasn't she just about to jump off a boat? Now she's banging dudes in cars, and she's posing for weird naked drawings, and this does not look like a woman who's terribly upset about her role in life, people. Which brings us to the door. Look at that door. That's a big-ass door. There's no way 2 people couldn't fit on that door. Move over. Move over. Why aren't you moving over? Oh, it's too late to move over. Well, at least your heart will go on. But his won't, because he's freaking dead because you wouldn't move over. And I know what you're thinking. Well, if she moved over, they both would have sunk.
Once they stabilize and get their balance, things are looking up.
Now look at these two fat bastards. These guys can balance on a door. They're making it work. I mean, Kate Winslet weighs 105 pounds, literally soaking wet, which she is. And I mean, DiCaprio's probably about, what, 140 in this movie? Maybe if he's got, like, rocks in his pockets? There's no way that door would capsize with them on that if it can support these two assholes. It's science, people. It's science. Which brings us to Old Rose, who, for some reason, goes on an expedition to revisit the Titanic, and the whole time she's actually got, like, this rare, super valuable necklace in her pocket. These assholes are out here looking for the necklace. You have it the entire time and you don't say anything? Look at this operation. There's submersibles. There's a giant boat. I mean, someone had to pay Bill Paxton. He doesn't come cheap. They're doing all this to find the necklace you have in your pocket. Oh, but you know what? Forget it. Forget it. It's all great. Just throw the necklace in the ocean. She wasted God knows how many millions of dollars on this operation when she had what they were searching for the entire frickin' time. And let's not forget, she kills DiCaprio. Yeah. So, number 3, Rose from Titanic. So, number 2 on the list of all-time movie villains, Susan from the Tom Hanks movie Big. Yeah, y'all know where this is going. Okay, so let's break this movie down. Tom Hanks, he starts off as a 13-year-old kid until he meets this shady Middle Eastern character named Zoltar. Now what this charlatan does is he tricks him.
I wish I were big.
Tom Hanks thinks he's going to get bigger, but no. He turns him into an adult. So I know what you're thinking, right? That makes Zoltar the villain of this movie?
It's an inanimate fucking object.
You're an inanimate fucking object!
Not really. What follows is we get to see Tom Hanks navigate the trials and tribulations of adulthood. Like we all don't have enough of that to do.
Welcome to the party, pal!
He has to get a job.
I play with all of this stuff, and then I tell him what I think.
He meets this evil bitch, Susan.
Loved your ideas on the squeezy doll line.
And a series of wacky misadventures ensues. I guess it's supposed to teach us all that somewhere deep inside of us, we can still connect to our inner child. I like to imagine my inner child looking like Haley Joe Osment. That way I feel a sense of accomplishment when I realize I've killed him with sarcasm and scotch. This one's for you, Haley Joe. Does anyone else remember when Tom Hanks used to do comedies? Bachelor Party, Splash, Volunteers, The Money Pit, The Man with One Red Shoe, The Burbs. And suddenly it's like someone cast this weird voodoo curse, and he's like, Oscar winner, Tom Hanks. The only explanation, really, is somewhere in a locked room there's a portrait of Tom Hanks getting funnier.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I just made a reference to a classic literary work in a YouTube video.
I still don't get it.
Read a book, people. Alright, forget it. Watch this YouTube video about it. It'll explain the joke.
What it do, gangster? This week we getting hedonistic with the picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde.
So let's talk about the evil succubus, Susan. She needs constant affirmation.
How do you feel about me?
She lives in a world of denial.
I'm his girlfriend.
And she pretty much never listens when other people talk.
I'm a child.
What?
If she did, she probably could have avoided this problem.
I want to spend the night with you.
Do you mean sleep over?
Yeah.
Okay. But I get to be on top.
8-year-olds, dude.
And this brings us to the real problem with Susan. For this, I'll need some musical accompaniment. She had sex with an underage kid. Now I know what you're gonna say. We don't actually know if they have sex. It's just implied. What's she implying here? And yes, I get it. She didn't know he wasn't 18.
I don't think so. That's how they get you.
Now, you may think this is going to lead to years of crippling therapy for Susan, but remember, she's the villain. Seriously, check out the end of this movie.
You won't even remember me.
I remember, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he's gonna remember this. But this is what bugs me, right? So he walks away and slowly he turns into a child. Look at that reaction. Shouldn't she be shocked? Shouldn't she be mortified? No. That look. That is the look of someone that got away with it. And this is why Susan comes in at number 2 on the all-time movie villain list. Number 1 on the all-time movie villain list, Jenny from Forrest Gump. Now I know what you're thinking, right? Jenny and Forrest are like
peas and carrots.
Yeah, that analogy only works if peas are an evil, manipulative narcissist and carrots are a masochist who thrives off toxic relationships. That's the case, sure. They're peas and carrots. Now look, I can't really defend Forrest all that much. He's got his fair share of problems. I mean, he's constantly stating the obvious.
Well, you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan.
Which is super annoying. And he kinda doesn't know when to back off. He's got a little bit of a stalker thing going.
Jenny.
But also, when the going gets tough, Forrest runs away. Like, for a long time.
That's what I did. I ran clear across Alabama.
He runs away for years.
For more than 2 years now, a man named Forrest Gump, a gardener from Greenbow, Alabama.
Like, he literally runs away from his problem. And Forrest does have some redemptive qualities. Sure, he'll punch you in the face. But he'll apologize afterwards.
Sorry I had a fight in the middle of your Black Panther party.
And he also shows that Alabama's always recruited really, really dumb football players. But most of all, he's always there for a friend, despite how much that friend drones on and on.
What you do is you just drag your nets along the bottom. On a good day, you can catch over 100 pounds of shrimp.
With their inane stories and drives you crazy so you just want to punch them in the face.
Done, Drill Sergeant!
He's a good guy. So let's talk about Jenny for a second, because she literally falls into like the worst stereotype of every decade. In the 60s, she's a dirty hippie. You know what's red, orange, and yellow and looks great on hippies? Fire. The answer is fire. Here she is in the late 70s, looking like she just walked off the set of Glenn Frey's Smuggler's Blues video.
It's the nature of the business, it's the smuggler's blues.
You millennials aren't going to get that joke. But the one thing she consistently did throughout the decades is treat Forrest terribly.
Why are you so good to me?
I mean, basically she friend-zoned him for 40 years.
I'll always be your girl.
And he thinks he's got a shot.
You're my girl.
You know, because one time he touched a boob. You see that horrified look on the roommate's face? That's the same reaction everybody has who watches this movie with their parents. But the real problem with Jenny is the manipulation. I mean, she's constantly showing up at Forrest's place and then leaving him. And showing up
Jenny!
And then leaving him. It's like every time she's emotionally vacant, she relies on Forrest to fill that void. And then when he does, she dusts him to go off to do God knows what with God knows who.
Can I ride? Where you going? I don't care.
She was gone.
Which leaves poor Forrest sitting on his southern plantation, pining away for Jenny. Like he's the lost member of Bartles and James.
To call it the Bartles and James wine cooler, because my last name is Bartles and Ed's is James.
Remember when we used to wear white pointy hats and go a-lynching?
Hepbridge Farm remembers.
And finally, when Jenny's an AIDS-ridden hoe bag, she returns to Forrest, throws him a sympathy bone, and marries him to top it all off. I mean, he's kind of rich. Doesn't this seem like a little bit of a scam? Then when all's said and done, she dumps her illegitimate child on him and dies.
I love you.
Run, Forrest, run to get a paternity test. Thanks a lot, Jenny. Now, the point is not lost on me that Jenny's illegitimate child looks exactly like my inner child. Luckily, I can kill feelings with booze. And that's why Jenny is the #1 villain on our top 5 villain list. She deserves it.